We're going to assume everybody is here and we have people watching this. So welcome to the Guelph Film Festival's first live stream ever, if you cannot tell by our great ability at technology. Fingers crossed this is actually live streaming. Anyone can feel free to message me and let me know if that's a thing. If not, then we will post this later. So my name is Kimber. I am the artistic director of the Guelph Film Festival, and today I have with me Jose Garcia, one of the programmers from this year's festival. So we are going to talk about some of Jose's choices for the festival this year and his experiences programming to give you all a little taste of what will be starting, what you'll be experiencing next week when the festival launches online. Again, the festival starts next Friday, so November 6th. How is it already November? Well, not quite, almost. And then the festival will be running for 9 days until November 14th. So thanks for joining us, Jose.
It's my pleasure. I'm really happy to be here. It was a great opportunity to work on the festival as well.
So to start off, do you want to give maybe a little intro as to who you are and what you brought to programming and your experiences?
Yeah, so I'm a sometimes filmmaker. I've been involved in a lot of experimental kind of art projects and music videos. I've also worked at festivals as a tech, art galleries, doing projection, installation, and technical direction. And I worked as a programmer for about 8 seasons at the Montreal First Peoples Festival, as it's called in English. Présence autochtone is the French name of the festival. And I think they're getting close to 30 years. So yeah, we would see about 100 to 200 films every year. That's where my primary programming experience comes from, but also just working in and around different film festivals as well. So yeah, and I've been living in Guelph for 3 years, and I came here from Montreal.
Nice. So given that you do have some previous experience working with another festival, how did you find that compared to working with the Guelph Film Festival? Might be a bit more of an intimate experience, I imagine.
Well, the other one was very intimate too. They definitely had space to show more films. They've been around. I've heard you're one of the older film festivals. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a funny one. We are one of the oldest documentary film festivals in the world, in that we started in, I believe, 1983, and then we had lots of money, and we were flying people in from like New Zealand and things, and then those lines of funding dried up, and we took a bit of a hiatus for the 90s, and then came back in, I believe, 2003, and then we've been going strong since then, and became a not-for-profit. And so it's kind of, we're not one of the longest running for that reason, but we are one of the oldest, minus that hiatus in the 90s.
Oh, cool.
So yeah.
Well, I think Présence autochtone started around that time. The early 90s, and they would show around 80 to 100 and so titles a year. They had about 10 days to a week to 10 days, depending on the year and depending on funding, for sure. And there was only 3 of us on the programming committee. We would take different chunks and then switch and trade. So I found that much more intimate than this. Actually, I'd never been with an online selection process. So where you had all the descriptions there and all your notes could go in there. It was really cushy, actually. It was fancy to me. I'm used to just writing a few lines, and I'd give a 1, 2, or 3 mark, yes, no, maybe, really simple. And then we discuss these things, of course. And prizes were selected by a different body. We'd have like 5 to 7 people who would come in and decide prizes. So totally, very similar, and also similar films. It was a very socially minded festival, and yes, it was mostly about Native life and experience, mostly Indigenous filmmakers from around the world, and so there was definitely some parallels to the vibe at this festival, I would say.
Great. So what were some of the films that really stood out for you? I'll start with, I guess, the ones that ended up in the festival, or how you kind of experienced that.
Yeah, I think for me, like the two that stood out the most are Stateless and Dilemma of Desire. Uh, Stateless is, you want me to just, I can give a little quick
Yeah.
preamble of what it's about. Stateless is it's about a woman who is working in Dominican Republic to with people of Haitian ancestry trying to regain status in Dominican Republic under these new laws that are trying to um, make it harder for people who are of Haitian ancestry to stay in the country. So they're trying to kind of move people back to Haiti, even though they've been there for their whole lives, kind of thing. So it's a theme that's very like connected to a lot of the stuff that's going on in other places in the world, including here, about immigration and like belonging and what really touched me was just the way the main character is so connected and dedicated to everything she's doing, and you can tell that everyone knows her, even though she's working with them as she's like I guess working with she has different cases and people she's advocating for, and she'll bring their cases to departments and try to get their status upheld, and so it's just a really powerful testament to just activism and being involved. And I thought that's like, in terms of a message for today, I think it's really important. um, and I thought just the power of the way she carried herself and the way people saw her and reflected her work back to her. You could tell that everyone really was listening. And there's a scene where she's in the middle. There's an election coming up in the town, and she's up for election as well. And people are kind of questioning her, like, if she wins, like, what will it change? And she stands and really like explains it in such a clear and simple way to people. And it was just, I don't know. I thought the whole thing was pretty fascinating and powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting how, sorry, my dog's talking in the background if you hear any squeaking. It's interesting how this like form of storytelling, this kind of slow following this one main character,
Mm-hmm.
Rosa, and how it plays out. I think it's one of the only films that we have in the festival this year that has that kind of follow doc
Mm-hmm.
POV of one individual kind of going through, but the individual is not the filmmaker,
Mm-hmm.
and how she's really able to kind of capture these intimate experiences and this long struggle that Rosa has going through this. And this is an NFTB partnership doc made by director Michelle Stevenson. But yeah, I agree. Like, it's such a lovely, slow and in-depth portrait of this struggle. And like you said, like, it's such a relevant conversation for these times when so many people are experiencing complex notions of statelessness and what it means to belong or not belong, and how if you have papers or don't, and how that ties in with these really intense political climates that we're experiencing, and how these things have been going on for so long, and that there's still so many people that end up in these marginal positions where they don't have anybody to turn to. And seeing that attorney Rosa fighting for them, I think that's very bang on, that it's a very relevant and moving documentary, and a different style.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something that we try, like, I know we talked about this a lot on the committee, that we try and do each year, that we are considering so many different aspects in how we program, because we program for our community, and that everybody has different styles and interests in documentary. So that goes to not just our three themes: social justice, the environment, and community building, but also to the style of the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
and that there's a lot of people that really love these kind of intimate portrayals that follow kind of one character or a community through. And I think Stateless is the one that really kind of represents that this year. And we'll speak to other docs, some that we've kind of showed previous years. One I can think of is Algo Mio, which was about now I'm gonna blank on what it was about. It's
It's okay.
style. COVID brain. So yeah, that's awesome. How did the filmmaking speak to you in any specific ways, or what are the things that you like, especially as a filmmaker? Like, you're obviously like super community minded as well, and that's sort of an ideal spot for the people that we look for on our committee. We both want filmmakers that have some of those sensibilities and understandings, but also the really important one is that we look for people that are very socially engaged, community minded, and even, you're newer to Guelph. I mean, I haven't been here for that long either. I think it's 9 years now, but speaking to those different angles when we're kind of assessing films. So what do you look for in a film?
Yeah, that's a good question, because with film festivals, you have so many different approaches to filmmaking. And how do you, like, I think one thing is to be clear, we're not judging films like what's good or bad. We're trying, I guess the idea is programming is trying to make a bunch of films fit together. And yes, you want like exciting films and like, but so comparing is really hard. I've always found that it's fascinating. And also comparing it in conjunction with other people is really interesting too. I look for, I guess, like, I think I used the word, I hope that hasn't been really annoying, that fan just turned off. I look for kind of point of view, like where is the camera being positioned? And I don't look for polish so much, sometimes I think some subjects lend well to kind of like a really polished, clean, you can tell there's like a crew or there's like an infrastructure around it. But I really appreciate when I see something that almost feels homemade. And when I say that, I mean that there was one person working by themselves. I remember at the first People's Festival, we awarded a top prize to a short film that was handheld by the filmmaker, and you looked out into the world that they were trying to show. And it was really beautiful, and that there was, it wasn't on a steady cam or anything, and so I look for kind of like people who are willing to take a risk in trying to do something that you can just tell it's like there's a personal kind of something is coming through in their filmmaking approach and like the way they position themselves. You were talking about Stateless and how it's this was the film at this festival where it's like we're following the protagonist, and that's a really hard, like I think in documentary that's a hard place to be, because sometimes you just end up just following whatever's happening, and it doesn't always give the best results. You have to place yourself, I think, somewhere and make decisions that are going to tell that story that you want to take. And sometimes the story is unfolding in front of you, and like you have to make really like strong decisions quickly. So I look for that. I look for like seeing that kind of like I don't know what exactly. I don't want to give it too much of a qualification or something, but yeah, just to see a point of view and that there were risks taken in that point of view, and that it made something exciting for everybody.
Sounds kind of like maybe like an intimacy, like and like that the filmmaker is in it even if you're not seeing it, and they're investing their time and their experience, and obviously building a long-term relationship with this individual and this community and investing themselves in these ways. I think that it can be quite different from some of the, like you're saying, like the higher budget or this film has very high production value in the style, but it's still a different style than a lot of the things that we'll see on a lot of the streaming services. And my dog's talking a lot in the background again, I apologize. And that's where you can control it more, where you're going to interview this person and interview that person, and there's value in that as well. But but it is a different, slightly more distanced experience, I think. And then these types of docs, these follow docs, offer a different perspective. And I also got a text from my co-director saying that Algamio is about Argentina's lost children. So if anybody was wondering about that doc I referenced, yeah, that is what that was about. And maybe that's what Gus is yelling at me about in the background. I think those, are really interesting points. And the thing that you said too about film festivals and how we program, and obviously neither of us can speak to all film festivals, but I think there is the assumption that you're just taking everything that's submitted and choosing the quote unquote best. And not that there isn't an aspect of that, but especially with our festival, as you know, like that's really not how we program, and that we are programming for this community, and we're programming for conversations to be sparked and to think about things further, and to think about how these larger stories speak to the community of Guelph and surrounding areas of Southern Ontario. So I think that that is a really important point, and something that I think a lot of people maybe aren't aware of when they think about programming for a film festival, that it's just, oh, you just choose the best and carry on. And then it's how all of these stories fit together and speak to these different types of filmmaking and style of storytelling, and how our themes work together, and what our community kind of expects. Like we always have some family content. We always have some more challenging content. We always have maybe a bit lighter, more enjoyable, just turn off and enjoy content, while still speaking to our themes. And I think those are things that a lot of people maybe don't know about when a film festival and how programming may go. What was the other film that you were very into this year?
I think it's called Dilemma of Desire. This is a film about basically about the clitoris, I think is the best way to sum it up. And
that's how I like to sum it up.
it's to put it simply. And I was kind of blown away just by, I mean, you know, all the people who speak in it. It's totally fascinating. I think it's something that everyone should see, and I think we should all be educated. We should all, like, you know, this is a starting point. It's amazing that, not in a good way, amazing. I mean, it's shocking that we still have no idea about what the clitoris looks like. And that was one of the most powerful things, was just like nature's design of like the complete, like the clitoris in the film is all of its internal parts. And they show this, an artist has created all these sculptures and is trying to put this image out there. And I was really blown away by the power of the design of the clitoris, and just as an image, and just as you know, I was really fascinated by that, just how that has not been revealed, like, at least to me, and
I had no clue.
I think I had no clue. Yeah. And it's so unfortunate. I wonder what kind of a different world we'd have if, like, if that had been part of our lives for centuries, you know, like what difference would that have made?
Yeah, even just like the idea that one of the things that they say in the documentary, that we put a man on the moon before we discovered what the anatomy of the clitoris was. Just those types of things that just still blow my mind, that we just have overlooked this, and how important a part of anatomy it is, and that everyone, you know, that has a clitoris, that has just been overlooked, and really not understanding what that is. Obviously, like, you didn't program last year, but one of the things too that I really love about this film, The Dilemma of Desire, is how it carries on from a film we screened last year that's called #Female Pleasure. So that film was all about the vulva, so it just seems like a natural place to go. We go vulva to clit, and get in and start and continue to have this conversation about female empowerment, and these different ways that we've been kind of not been allowed these conversations, and that these just the basic anatomy has not been shared, even with those of us that have them, and how much that we just don't know about it. And yeah, like you said, Sophia Wallace is a fabulous artist and will be joining us for our opening night discussion with The Dilemma of Desire next Friday. Put a plug in for that. So everybody should join us next Friday for this talkback discussion with Sophia Wallace about the film, and along with the director, Maria Finizzo. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but the director and Sophia, the artist, will be here.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, it should be really interesting, and she has some amazing art too that's for sale on her website. Yeah, anything else about The Dilemma of Desire that stood out to you or made you think?
Well, right away, the first person to speak, I believe, is a Black woman. And I think a lot of the voices are biracial, women of color. And I thought that was really important, like right away. It's like a really diverse group of people talking about this. And I don't know if that was the same in the film with the vulva, but I don't know if that would have been like this 10 years ago. But I was really,
years ago even.
Yeah,
no.
So, again, I thought that was super important, along with the theme of the film as well.
Yeah, I think I feel that this year a lot more films, and last year, and yeah, the hashtag female pleasure also is a very diverse female collection of subjects from around the world. But even in other films this year throughout, same with Coded Bias, another of our films that we're closing the festival with a discussion for. All of these films, it's becoming much and more expected, and which is fabulous, that there is diversity in gender and experience, and all of these different things, that we're not still sticking to the white dude narrative, and that we're looking at whose story it is and who's telling it, and making sure that there is a lot of diversity in the subjects that are being chosen. And I think that's fabulous and way freaking overdue. And and the joy of not having men explain anatomy to us is always great. And having kick-ass Black female scientists get in there and talk about their research is fabulous. So.
I think like, just also on the topic of pleasure is like not something that we like sexual pleasure, but in general, and I think that's an important theme that is part of this, like not taught these things. It's just the sort of denial of pleasure in our day-to-day lives, as like, or just like that's something we talk openly about, and like what it means for people. And I feel like it's something you sort of have to discover by yourself on your own, either through reading or talking to friends. But I think it's easier probably nowadays in some parts of some places, but I think it's something we omit from our kind of dialogues and teachings and upbringing.
Yeah, for sure. And just being able to have an open conversation about the clitoris or the vulva, or like, and just even use those words. Maybe Facebook is censoring us right now. Who knows? But yeah, I wanted to say too, because I could not remember the name of the kick-ass scientist that we were talking about, and that's Dr. Stacey Dutton. And so definitely look up her research, people, because she is the one that's really getting into this clitoris anatomy and the importance of it for all sorts of areas of health. But yeah, I think that's so relevant that we need to have more overt conversations. And I believe one of Sophia Wallace's prints says, "I want to be adored," is one of her things around the clitoris. And then of course, clitoracy, that you can't have democracy without clitoracy is a fallacy, is
I love that.
the key phrases from her work. And I think that there's so many things, and it's such a great way to spark a conversation about this and learn more, and think about the implications of what it means to have not known for so long about this really important piece of anatomy, and this piece of anatomy which is about pleasure, but also about so many more things, and that we can spark that conversation. And I'm excited to have that conversation further and carry on with it throughout the festival. Well, we've been talking for half an hour now.
Oh, geez,
Yeah, so we should probably wrap it up, but is there any final things that you'd like to say, Jose, or is there anything that you you wanted to talk about that you haven't talked about so far?
Not that I can think of. That covers a lot. What's happening with the other members of the selection committee?
We will see. We may have Gisela joining us next week to talk about some of her selections.
Amazing.
But yeah, and so we there may be another one of these next week. Stay tuned.
Cool.
And if not, we'll have some other surprises for promotion and get everybody ramped up for the festival. So people, if anybody out there actually is watching, get your passes at guelphfilmfestival.ca/passes, and all of this information about these great films and the trailers for both Stateless and The Dilemma of Desire are up there. And thank you so much for joining us, Jose.
You're welcome.
And
Thanks, Kimber.
thanks to anybody that joined on Facebook. Apparently this worked, so that's good.
Yeah.
I am going to end our live stream.
Do it.